Hello everyone. I just wanted to post a quick short video because I'm going to be posting a longer video today, and I wanted to give you guys some context for that video. So first of all, I am a politically independent person. I have never really trusted institutions, politics, media, because I am a researcher. I'm somebody who has learned a lot about, occult, the occult, and a lot of the organized crime and stuff that goes behind power, the politics of power. And from a young age, I had experiences that showed me the corruption of people in power and how people, will hide behind their public persona, but kind of the Jekyll Hyde thing. And so I've always been very skeptical of media, government, institutions, etc. And I've always been that way, and I've always been somebody to talk about these things. Anybody who knows me. And so for a long time I was on the left because the left tended to be more skeptical back, about 15 years ago or more, when I first found myself in more radical left spaces. There was a lot more, there were people who had very militant ideas and beliefs about things, and they would clash, even though they were both, groups that were on the left, different groups that clashed with each other, and we still see a lot of that today. But there was still more kind of like open dialogue and room for like differences of opinion, and a lot of people didn't agree with me about my spiritual beliefs or, research I would done, and kind of the more out there like conspiracy stuff that I would talk about. But I was still allowed to talk about those things and have an opinion, and people were more willing to debate and have discussions. But over the last 10 years, with identity politics kind of taking over the conversation and the political correct language that has been passed down from the liberal academic elite, there's just been a lot of changes within these left communities, and it's become much more cult-like and much more, if you don't believe everything that we believe, then you are the enemy. There's like a lot more extremism. And so I have a lot of critique of the left because I have spent a lot of time in leftist spaces, but that doesn't make me far right. Although, a lot of people at this point will label you as far right or alt-right, because the Overton window has shifted. But I've seen a lot of this stuff firsthand because I've been part of these communities. And one of the myths about the left is that they're against hierarchy, and that's just simply not true. They just have a different hierarchy, and they're extremely hierarchical. It's just in an opposite direction, where, people who, in the language of, these oppressor dynamics, the people who have the particular appearance. So, regardless of your background, if you are white, you are privileged, and if you're black, you are oppressed. Okay, that's just a simple example. Even though you can have a white person who has been more marginalized throughout their life, in a conversation with a person of color who has had more privilege, the person with the white skin or the lighter skin is still going to be seen as the oppressor in that dynamic, even if the person of color actually came from more lived privilege, if that makes sense. So my critique about the left isn't because I hate the left more than the right, but at this point I feel like the left has pushed out so many people with more balanced or moderate viewpoints that, that's part of the reason that we're seeing the left become more and more extreme, because a lot of the more kind of rational people, and more down-to-earth people have left the chat. And I'm somebody who's working class and working poor. I actually, I spent sometime in my 20s. I was locked up for over 100 days. I spent in jail over a minor graffiti charge, and then I was picked up trespassing. I was extradited 1,000 miles for essentially for graffiti and for hitchhiking. And I watched, people who had violent offenses on their records be picked up and released, and so a lot of the stuff that's going on isn't new. It's just that it's escalated to the point where more and more people are noticing what's going on. And part of the reason I had to leave the left was because you're not allowed to notice, or you're allowed to notice, but you're not allowed to commentate on certain things. And this is especially true when it comes to race and gender and sexuality stuff. So this is why, even though there's a growing number of people who are detransitioning, who've had really negative experiences with cross-sex hormones and surgeries and things like that, that detrans people are not allowed to speak in trans spaces because it's seen as hateful, even though at one point detransitioner were people who considered themselves trans and were part of trans communities. And this is just ways of shutting down survivors, essentially, which I think is so offensive, because the left is so much about supposedly supporting the oppressed and supporting the marginalized, but they really cherry pick which people are gonna be supported and what kind of survivors are going to be supported, instead of just survivors across the board being supported. It's we have to figure out your identity and your pronouns and your political beliefs before we're going to support you. And I'm not saying that, again, the main reason I can critique the left is because I was a part of that for a long time. I shared in a lot of those mentalities until it got to a point where I was being personally attacked, and it just became so absurd, the lies that were going on in the media and how mainstreamed a lot of these far left opinions had become, that it was there's something wrong here. And why are good people getting punished for speaking up, or people who are just trying to share their stories or share what's happened to them are being silenced and shut down because it doesn't fit the narrative. And then of course those people are getting swept up into the right, because again, the left has pushed out so many well-meaning people who just have differences in opinion or differences in experiences, and they are actually feeding people to the right and to the conservatives by being so close-minded. And growing up, I experienced a lot of trauma in the church and with Christian school that I went to, and I always had a problem with the hypocrisy of a lot of Christians, and I always felt why we're taught the Gospels and we're taught all these teachings of Christ, but yet the people in the church are more like the people who killed him, like the Pharisees and the Sadducees, these very self-righteous people who are forcing this legalistic doctrine and way of looking at the world. And I realized in the last couple of years that it's not just the Christian ultra conservatives who have this self-righteous moral superior attitude. It's actually the left is one of the biggest culprits of this in the modern era. And that was really eye-opening for me to realize that it's not white people that are evil, it's not men that are evil, it's not rich people maybe are a little more evil because they can, but You know, it's just that we're human and we are all part of this. And this is one of the things I love about like true Christianity, like the true like followers of the way. I would like to use that. And Paul used that terminology, the followers of the way, is that we are not a race, we are not a religion, we are not um, a, a country. We are the followers of Christ, and we find ourselves in God's family because we choose that path. We choose to be in God's family. God called us out of where we were at and where we came from. And so we can't be superior to anyone. And we're not superior to anyone. If anything, we realize how broken we are and how broken the world is, and how the only thing that is going to save us is God, um, and Christ, and following in those footsteps, following in the way. And there were other teachers, there were other prophets who brought wisdom, even outside of Christianity, even outside of Judaism or whatever. We have a lot of like in the East, we have a lot of wisdom that has been taught to us from the ancients and the elders, but there's something special about the Savior, and there's no one like him. And he really, um, he came to show us the way, but we have to choose to follow that because we have free will. And it's up to us um, to claim that free will and not to just get sucked into going along with um, what everyone else is doing or what the world says we should do. So that's all for now. I just was thinking about that. I don't know, I'm kind of rambling, but I'll talk to you all later. Bye.